Coming to you from Indianapolis, this is Significant Brothers. I'm Cray.
I'm Chase.
And I'm Brad.
And today we are talking about cults.
Cray, why are we in Indianapolis?
Yesterday, we ran a marathon and all had a collectively miserable time. But now we're done.
But the pain lingers on.
Yes.
Have you guys ever been in a cult before?
I joined crew in college, and I think no, I've never been in a cult before. Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. Have not been in a cult.
Cults aren't illegal, are they?
No, but I think there is like a government watch list of cults, something that they keep. So they can keep track of cults.
Well, cults is such like an ambiguous phrase, but sometimes they can't get like religious protection that they do in the US, like tax exemptions. But mostly cults are just kind of, they either all worship sort of one follower or one leader of the church, or they're just extremely manipulative to people or abusive to people who don't agree with the larger views of the group, you know. Beatings and hunger and just excluding them from society, basically, is what a cult is, more or less. Alright, Chase, so what's your cult of the week?
So, there is a place in Chattanooga, Tennessee that I have never been to, but I believe you guys have been to.
Nope.
I have been to.
It is called the Yellow Deli.
And it is delicious.
And their whole shtick is organic food, healthy food.
Holistic, healing food, maybe.
Yeah, so they have like dietary restrictions because they are in a religious organization that may or may not be a cult. They would say they are not a cult. And I am hesitant to say they are a cult, but more just a group of people.
You know what? Let's just call them a cult for now, and then we and the audience can decide by the end if they're a cult.
It's okay. The people at the restaurant serve organic food, and they are very open about like this being a sort of ministry where they can be open to questions. They like it when you're at the restaurant and you ask them questions like, what is your whole organization about? And they'll probably invite you to their little farm outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee, for activities that they do. I've never been to any of their activities, but
I know they hold worship services in their restaurant. If you tip them. No, I'm just kidding. It's like during a day of the week they'll close it down, or they'll end early another day, and then you can go in there for worship services.
because their Sabbath is on Saturday.
I think so, yeah.
So pretty much this all started with this guy named Eugene Spriggs. He and 50 other people were all members of a church, a Baptist church, I believe, in Tennessee, and they weren't getting much out of it, and they were like, we're not actually doing like stuff like what the Lord wants us to do. And there's a few verses in the Bible that he thought like they weren't living according to those, so he's going to start his own church. And so they all moved into a house together, and they opened up 6 cafes in Chattanooga, and they served food but also ministered to people while they did it.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's up until that point, it's good. However, I guess one thing that they separate themselves with the Christians on is they don't believe in personal salvation. Only like everybody collectively can be saved, which is I guess why that's the cult way. But eventually they started branching out, and they had a few places, and they moved upstate to upstate New York, and then they also put a place in Vermont. So they have this branch in San Diego, California, that you get to pick from one of 3 jobs. You can work at a coffee shop that they own, you can work for a construction company that they own, or you can work on their ranch. And you don't get paid because you're part of this organization, and you all share stuff. And recently they got in trouble with the California Division of Labor because they don't pay their workers. So I don't know how they escape that now, but it's, I think, religious organization aside, you can't not pay people even if they're volunteering. So they have a lot of different sources of income that support their organization. So all of the men have to have a ponytail and beards, and women have to wear essentially harem pants and skirts.
They're trendy.
They're trendy.
They're
No,
with the times right
they
now.
look. If you're in a coffee shop and you have a beard nowadays, you blend right in. So yeah, they have the organic food thing going for them. It's pretty great. Some of their beliefs are like Mosaic law as far as like dietary restrictions. Hence their what they serve in the Yellow Deli. They celebrate Yom Kippur and a bunch of other. They have like bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs and other Jewish traditional things. So they wouldn't call themselves Christians, and I don't think Christians would call them Christians either.
But they wouldn't call themselves Jewish either.
They're not. No. See, and this is why, because they're. This is why they might be called a cult, because they don't have figurehead belief. They didn't even think that Eugene Spriggs is like a person to be worshipped. They still worship God, but they don't worship the original like leader of the cult, which is why it seems like they might not be a cult. At one of their houses, the one in Chattanooga, if you are married and you have kids, you get to live inside the house. And if you are not married, you get to live in the backyard in a yurt, which is like a tent. And yeah,
it's like a Mongolian tent.
Isn't it?
yeah, it's a Mongolian tent essentially. So they just like to branch out into different cultures. Okay, so the people at the Yellow Deli, they aren't, their organization is not called the Yellow Deli, as I originally thought it was. It's called the 12 Tribes, being like the 12 tribes of Israel. So they're trying to have like, they don't even have 12 organizations, but they call themselves the 12 Tribes.
It's interesting because they base their split off from the church by a New Testament scripture, and yet they still have a lot of Old Testament traditions. And hey, let's throw in a Mongolian tent in there.
It sounds a little Seventh-day Adventist.
It does actually. I think one reason, well, a few reasons, is they worship on Saturday. They have the dietary restrictions that a lot of Seventh-day Adventists actually go by. But one interesting story is they're actually quite friendly with the band The Grateful Dead. One time in 1989, they were at a concert because they tour with bands, but not actually tour with the bands, but they just follow the bands, and they have healthcare tents that they run. And at this particular concert, they had their bus. It's called the Peacemaker, and it's kind of iconic, and they have two of them now. And so at the concert, everyone started rioting over I don't know what, and so the police couldn't control the crowd, and they yelled over to the Peacemaker and the 12 Tribes group, and they said, "Hey, help us out." And then out come people from the bus playing instruments and dancing around, and then they got the whole crowd to watch them, and everyone started to join in, and they made peace. So when asked at the concert by a reporter, one of the people in the 12 Tribes said, "We have found the way. No, not LSD or even legalized pot. We have met the one who does make a difference. You can read about him in the Bible. Yes, but we call him by his Hebrew name, Yeshua." So what they're saying is it's very trippy, but it's not LSD.
So maybe not a cult?
They have cult-like properties.
They have cult-like properties. I think one of the reasons I don't want to call them a cult is because they don't want to call themselves a cult. But
That's a terrible
right.
reason.
I think they're probably a cult. According to like our definition of a cult, they kind of have some of the symptoms, but they're not violent, and they don't worship their leader. But they do have a weird branch of religion that is like doesn't follow the traditional sense of Christianity, or Judaism for that matter. So
I guess that's also another definition of a cult, is something that's not like the mainstream religion.
I'm sure Christianity kind of sounded like a cult when it was a thing at first.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
Yep.
They used to call themselves the Way. I mean,
Yeah.
how does that not sound like a cult?
Plus, you had a guy who was going around saying that he was God. Jesus, of course. So if you were Jewish at the time, you'd probably be pretty offended.
Absolutely.
They were.
Yeah.
Oh, so Brad, what is your favorite cult of the week?
Mine is the Order of the Solar Temple. I chose this partially off because it has a really cool name.
It is a cool name.
I think it could be a band as well. Probably metal in origin.
I can see it.
But mine started back in 1986, and it was kind of... They chose this name, or were trying to continue some sort of... Or it was almost a continuation of another more ancient cult that happened back in... Well, happened hundreds of years before this. But it was founded in 1986 by Jacques Jaurès and Joseph de Mambrou. And they moved to Quebec from Switzerland after starting this cult, and they established a chapter there, and it served as the cult's headquarters, while still keeping some of it over in Europe, but the main place was in Quebec. And a few years later, they declared that the world would be engulfed in warfare and famine.
So Armageddon.
Armageddon, you know, it's a doomsday cult, this is. But only Quebec would be spared, and then they proceeded to build nuclear air and raid shelters. By 1990, not everyone was really convinced by the organization. People were saying that the claims that Jacques and Joseph were making were a little bit too specific. Like, oh, that's a little weird, guys. And then they kind of, not a spy is the wrong word.
A mole.
Not even a mole. He was part of the organization, but then he realized what he was doing was kind of weird.
Skeptic.
Skeptic is good. He was setting up...
A free thinker.
He was a free thinker. So he was setting up things like contraptions and gadgets that would kind of help prove that they were part of the supernatural. But the only people that really knew about this were the two leaders and Tony. And Tony was uncomfortable with this, so he decided to tell some of the other members that what they were seeing were not part of the supernatural. Obviously, this upset some people. They're having the wool pulled over their eyes, and it was just no good. So they became displeased. And then on October 4, 1994, Tony was stabbed 50 times.
Jeez.
Which,
That's
like, after the first two stabbings, you're like, oh, it was kind of an accident. But the last 48, I'm sure, were pretty intentional.
oops.
Watch where you stick your knife there.
His wife was stabbed 8 times in the back, 4 in the throat, where conception was believed to have occurred. I don't know.
Even if it occurred in the throat, if you're planning on killing this person, I don't think conception is going to happen either way.
I don't know. And then
You'll never have sex again.
and then 1 time in each breast. And then their infant son was also stabbed 6 times. So after these stabbings occurred, they're kind of like, well, we might be in a little bit of trouble here. People are going to doubt us anyway. So 12 hours later, a chalet was found burning in a Swiss village. 22 bodies were found. They had bags over their heads, and they were laid in kind of a very ritualistic manner.
Okay. Like a triangle.
Like a pentagram.
They weren't scattered all over the place. So, needless to say, obviously they didn't die from the fire. They were also poisoned, because how could they organize the bodies unless they were burned? And then a few hours later, 25 more bodies were found in another village. And I believe also that Jacques and Joseph died in that fire as well. And one of the things that one of them had said is that fire is what will engulf him, is what will take him away. But they were obviously able to identify the body, so the fire did not take them like they had wanted to.
So, Gray, what is your cult of the week?
Mine is the Branch Davidians. It's a break off of a religion. The first one being the Seventh-day Adventists that we talked about earlier. The one with holistic restrictions, and they're actually an established religion. And I don't know a ton about their...
I believe they're Christians.
Yes, Christians. They worship on Saturday. They have dietary restrictions. So the first break off was actually They were kind of called the Shepherd's Rod or the Davidian Seventh-day Adventists. They broke off from the original Seventh-day Adventists in 1929 when this guy in the church, Victor Hutef, thought his beliefs were sort of better or needed to be supplemented to the church, so he made a publication, and it was largely received as heresy and divisive, so they gave him the boot. He then went to people who sort of sympathized with his beliefs or also believed what he was preaching, joined him at this place kind of near Waco, Texas, a place he bought called the Mount Carmel Compound Center. It's just basically this big building for them to gather, but they sort of all kind of worship this Victor guy, and they were all trying to bring about the end of the world. After his death in 1955, his wife, Victor's wife, said in 1959, Christ is coming to town and we got to prepare for that. So about 800 people showed up in 1959.
How did she know?
You know, it's this, they chose this number out of the Bible. It's like 1200 or something. They're like, all right, 1200 days after his death or something. I think Victor made some predictions, but then she's like, here's the real prediction. It's like 1250 days or something like that. They chose it from some random verse. You know how cults, doomsday people just choose these random numbers. So that's how she quote unquote knew. And in a stunning turn of events, nothing happened, and a lot of people were disappointed.
I wanted my apocalypse done.
I just got evicted. After this sort of falling out of the organization, other factions formed. Some people just went back to Seventh-day Adventist Church where they didn't predict the end of the world. And then there were the Branch Davidians. The Branch Davidians were first led by someone by the last name of Rodin. But after sort of a long and complicated power struggle, David Koresh came into power, and he sort of radicalized the group more so than they already were. He sort of told people that, like the seven seals, and I think it's the seven seals of the apocalypse in Revelations, is opened by a lamb, and he said he was the lamb in Revelations, though it's traditionally believed to be Jesus. So he's basically, he's saying, I am Jesus, I'm the only one who can interpret scripture. Anyone who disagrees with me will be beaten or food deprived, and outside family ties will be severed. So it's like classic cult right here.
Yeah.
So they started gathering up firearms for whatever reason, probably to prepare for the apocalypse. I don't know how effective a gun is in the apocalypse, but so the government realized that they were stockpiling firearms. They ended up having like around 305 total firearms, including some 50 caliber rifles, and an arrest was warranted. The federal government went to go seize these weapons, but it was of course met by gunfire. So they kind of backed off, and that's when like a siege of the compound began. It started February 28 and lasted until April 19. So the government had like hundreds of agents and tanks and other things, tear gas. The government was going to tear gas the building, and of course their natural reaction was, we are going to light the building on fire. So they did, and I believe that's how a lot of Branch Davidians died, about 76 of them.
Why did they want to light the building on fire?
I don't really know. Death by fire is the purest death or something like that.
Or was it like part of their belief?
I don't think it is, but it might have also been like, we're not going to die by you or something like that. But I think the thing is, I'm pretty sure David Koresh, the leader, the crazy leader, was like initiating this, like telling people like, light things on fire. And his top aide, Steve Schneider, I think in their last moments, sort of came to a sudden realization that this guy might be a little bit crazy.
Not when the military is outside Nay.
No. It was when he started lighting things on fire. He killed David Koresh, his top aide. Then everyone died, pretty much. 9 survived, and those 9, if they were all convicted, they had been released as of July of 2007. Still around today. NPR did an article where they interviewed some of them, and they're sort of saying, like, still, we're waiting for the resurrection of David Koresh and his followers, and we're just waiting around till it happens.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Oh, man. That fire thing's a bummer.
Yeah, it was just a huge, messed up, weird group. Like, I think objectively a cult, like Yellow Deli, or I'm sorry, the 12 Tribes, if they're a cult, so be it. They make great food, and I don't care. Solar Temple, yeah, definitely a cult, and mine, definitely a cult. Branch Davidians sound awful.
One of the things that I don't like about those is they're clearly manipulating people. Mm-hmm. And, like, I guess, I don't know the types of people who join cults, but it seems like people who are maybe at, like, a low in their life, and they're desperate to find some sort of meaning in a cult. It kind of branches out to them. And that just sounds like it's even worse then, in my opinion. Because you just made that person's life worse than when they didn't have meaning.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. People who are sort of like, I need a community, and then they end up being, like, way worse off than they originally were.
You'll find yourself in a burning building in Waco, Texas.
And you'll be saying,
I should have joined that bowling league.
If you would like to keep up with our significant happenings, you can subscribe to our newsletter at tinyletter.com/significantbrothers.
If you want to email us, you can find us at sigbrotherspod@gmail.com.
And if you want to find us on Twitter for all of our great tweetness, you can find us on @significantbros.
Thanks for listening.
Have a cult-free day.